Oh, hi there. It's Julie Condlev, and you're listening to the Chris Smit Cultural Show.
Hey Julie, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. I don't know where you are, although I have a vague idea, judging from your accent. But let the audience know a little bit more about who you are. So here's the line of questioning. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where do you come from? Where are you now as we talk and as we're recording this? And we're recording this, by the way, in July 2024. And tell me a little bit about your cultural frame of reference, please.
Incredible. Thank you so very much, Chris. Starting off with my accent, I think it will be interesting for your guests to try to guess where I'm from because I do have a dislocated accent, I would say. And that's because I'm originally from Zimbabwe. I left Zimbabwe in 1998 and I came over to United Kingdom. So as we speak, I am based in the United Kingdom. So that's why my accent is a bit culturally dislocated,
Hmm.
if you will. Because some people say I sound South African. My husband, who is British English, he says I sound more English than he does. But other people say I sound Australian. So I have got no idea what people would say in terms
Uh-huh.
of my accent. But Zimbabwe is where I'm from. United Kingdom is where I've lived since 1998, and that's the place I now call home.
Cool. All right. Excellent. I would have guessed indeed South Africa as well. Yeah, and but I also guess that if you're there, if you stay there, you go back and visit family and friends and stuff like that, and you're there for 2 weeks, you come back, and then it sort of it becomes heavier, the accent, right? Yeah.
That is so true.
All
People
right.
can tell when I've been on holiday because I still speak my own language when I'm out there. And so, yeah, you can pick up on that.
What is your own language then?
Shona. So I speak Shona. So I can say Mangwanani, which means good morning. And
Uh-huh.
obviously I speak it fluently. So yeah. And when I'm mad at my husband, I also speak in Shona because
Poor
he
thing.
doesn't understand.
Poor, poor thing.
Yes.
Anyway, all right. Okay. Well, let's get on. Let's get on with the content then. Although this is part of the content as well. If I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken, that this is part of my research. Is how do you end up in property investing and auctioning? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Chris. And it just to piggyback on what we were talking about. So I left Zimbabwe, came to the United Kingdom, struggled really in my early years because I didn't actually know anyone here. So I became homeless. So it was a painful time for me and my background. My family were homeless as well after my father died when I was 10 months old. So when it comes to homes, property, it's a painful part of my life, or was a painful part of my life. So property is something that I just really wanted to get more educated on. I really wanted to understand why some people could be so wealthy from properties, why a home can be such a safe, environment, and other people have got loads of them, but some people are homeless. They don't even have a roof over their shoulders, over their heads rather. So I
Mhm.
just really wanted to have a good understanding of that. So I developed a passion in terms of property, but it was based on pain, like my painful experiences that I had. So that drove me to, become very passionate about properties. So in terms of my auction journey, that's where it started. I qualified as a solicitor specializing in property matters for
Uh-huh.
those same reasons. And then I started buying my own properties when I could afford to. And auctions were where I bought lots of my most of my properties. If I could speak, I'd be dangerous. So that's the long and short of it. So I bought quite a lot of properties myself at auction, and as a solicitor, I understood the conveyancing process in Great Britain because I've been practicing for over 20 years.
Mm.
Obviously, at the time, I think I'd been practicing for 10, 15 years, but it was just conventional conveyancing, traditional conveyancing. So when I came to do auctions, Chris, it was a totally different ballgame. Because as I was buying at auctions, I would have like a very strict timeline to complete. And most solicitors wouldn't be able to comply with those strict timelines. So I would always face challenges. So that's why I thought, oh, okay, there is a problem. Where there's a problem, there must be a solution. So that's where we are, auction wise. That's why I set up my practice.
Now, I'm Dutch. I'm not sure if you knew that in advance of this podcast. You can expect any question as direct as they come. So this is
I'm
not a
ready.
this is not a question you should answer, but what goes through my mind is so you must be filthy rich now.
I love
Don't answer
that.
that. Don't answer that. Don't even go there.
No, I know, I do, I do. I will answer it if I may.
Sure.
Thank you so much. I don't know whether I can say I'm filthy rich, but I think, relatively speaking, I came from a family where we're so poor, Chris, like
Mhm.
poor with a capital P. I lived in the ghetto. I lived like in the roughest area that one could be in, those high density suburbs in Africa. So coming from that to where I am now, I'm set in a house that's worth 1.2 million. And I also have loads of other properties worth quite a lot of money. So I am worth quite a few millions. So if you would describe that as filthy rich, then perhaps I am.
Okay, I told you not to answer this one, so this was by your own
Oh, sorry.
conviction. Okay, so but it's a good segue into a couple of questions that bump up or come up into my mind. Is um,
Okay.
how in terms of you came to the UK, what is it, 98, 26 years ago, right? Something like
Yeah.
that. And what was the biggest cultural difficulty that you experienced coming from Zimbabwe originally? And then evidently, I guess you spoke English already?
Yes, I did.
That's an assumption. So that's
Yes.
and then so the follow-up question is, so what the first question is, what were the cultural difficulties that you were facing? And given your background, does that give you a specific niche in the marketplace that you cater to people that are interested in your services?
Yeah, really good questions. Really great questions. Where do I start? Okay, so firstly, yes, I spoke English. I
Mhm.
spoke very good English, and I still do now. But the problem is the English that I spoke was not British English, as it were. So I had my own accent,
Mhm.
which, I could mimic now, but I would rather not. So it was very difficult sometimes for people to understand because we all speak English, don't we? The Americans speak English, the English speak English, but and loads of different countries, people speak
Sure.
English. But sometimes your accent can be one's accent, not your, but one's accent can be very difficult, for the other to understand.
Yeah.
So that was one of the first struggles because I was thinking, hang on, I'm speaking proper English. This is actually a word in the dictionary. Do you not understand it? So that was a bit of a cultural shock because I
Can
was
imagine.
thinking, okay, yeah, absolutely. So that was that. And then just literally just getting at the airport and I didn't even know anyone and I didn't know where to go. And somebody had like little notes to say, you've got to catch a tube. Tube. As far as I'm concerned, a tube was some black little, thing. And I was thinking, what is a tube? Okay, then I get educated. A tube is the London Underground, right? So I'm going to be underground. All of those things were like a cultural shock to me because I'm coming from somewhere totally different. So
Mhm.
it's not just the language, but it's quite a whole lot of different things that one has to actually really, really understand. So that was that. And then fast forward a few years later, then I got married to my husband. And then the food is totally different. And I'm just thinking, what is this? A Sunday roast? We're having the most bland food here, spice it up a little bit. So it's quite a lot of things from a cultural perspective that are super duper different. And they were difficult for me to navigate. But those were just only the things in my personal life, Chris. I then started working and I was blessed enough to work for some of the biggest law firms in the whole world,
Mhm.
like Dentons. It is still the biggest law firm in the world. And I worked for Dentons. And then again, culturally, totally different. These people, they went to private school. They speak properly. They've got all this etiquette that I don't have.
Hmm.
So all of that, just navigating all of that was an uphill struggle. So I had to get polished, as it were. And by that, I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, because I know some listeners would think that, you have to be authentic, you've got to respect your culture, you've got to stay true to who you are. Yes,
Hmm.
I understand that. And I'm all for that. But my thought process is, when you're in Rome, you do what the Romans do. So I think there has to be a degree of, acknowledging the culture of the land that you perhaps chose to be in, because I chose to be in Great Britain. So I need to acknowledge the British culture. I need to adopt it, if I want to be British. And I am British, by choice, of course, yes, by marriage. So I just think, yeah, I needed to say that, because I don't want people thinking that, I became fake so I could be accepted in this community. And it's not like that. So I think with cultural matters, Chris, you're more educated than I am, but I think there are quite a lot of nuances. And I just think, as a people, if you go to a different culture, I am a firm believer that you should acknowledge their culture, accept it if you can, and just be at one with it.
As much
Those
as
are my views.
no, that's good. That's a good part of the first question, because the second question was is that, given your background from Zimbabwe, integrated in the UK, adapting either way, does that give you an edge in terms of getting your specific niche of clients, your specific set of clients that you have?
Yeah, actually, thank you for reminding me of that part of the question, which I hadn't answered. Yes and no, it is the answer. So when I started off, I was just focusing on the British community. And then in 2017, I decided to step away from that. And I thought, you know what, exactly like you're saying, I've got a niche community. I've got people who are coming from Africa, people who face the same struggles that I've faced. I have made it now. I've made my first million. So why don't I turn my attention, focus on those people, because it's niche. I speak their language,
Yeah.
literally, metaphorically, and
Yes.
however else. I've walked the same journey as they have. So why don't I go back and give back, as it were?
Hmm.
So that was my intention. That is exactly what I wanted to do. So then I wrote my first best-selling book, Strategies for Investment Success. That book was literally written with my fellow Zimbabwean in mind, with a fellow Zimbabwean who'd come to Great Britain with very little money. I had £500 in my back pocket.
Hmm.
So when I wrote that book, it was specifically for that particular niche, because I thought and I believed they needed it. I was welcomed in my own community here, UK Zimbabwean community, which was great. But I found that as people got to know a lot more about my success story, loads of other people fell by the wayside. It was difficult for people to comprehend that somebody like them, somebody who'd just come literally from the ghetto, could actually rise to get to that point.
Yeah.
So then I had groups of people who absolutely hated me, and they slated me, and they did everything that they could to bring me down. So all those cultural things started coming in. How can she be so wealthy? How can she get to the top? She must have done something wrong. She must have some snake spitting money. All of these like traditional things, from Africa. And I'm just thinking, hang on, I've come to you to give back, so
Right.
I'm really, really passionate about that side of my story, because then after that, I had to run away. I literally had to. So no, I am not there anymore. I do not cater for my own community. I don't. And that's the truth. That is just that. I
Okay.
love my people. Absolutely love them with all my heart. But sometimes you can love people from a distance. And that's what I do.
That makes sense. And the different communities that you cater to, or your different clients that you cater to. I hope the background noise is not that bad. There's a bit of drilling going on here, which I cannot stop.
I can't hear it at all. I
Okay,
can't hear
good.
it at all.
Hopefully the audience can't either. In the different audience or the people that you cater to, what do you see any cultural differences between them? Say, take the Aussies, take the South Africans, take maybe other African countries, or even the local Brits.
Do I see cultural differences generally?
In between these couple of countries that I mentioned, or any countries that you can add to that.
Oh yes, yes, I do. I do. I see cultural differences, and it's almost like I've got like some radar, something where I can actually just pick up on loads of different things. Even just emailing people from different countries, I, I can pick up on loads of different things. So we are all different. We're
Yeah,
all different, aren't we? So even in the African community, there are communities that I would, perhaps prefer to work with than others. But not just that. I think we've all got different qualities as cultures. And in my current team, I am blessed to have people from different parts of the world. I've got people from Sri Lanka, I've got people from South Africa, I've got some people from Zimbabwe. And I know that could probably be a contradiction where I said I don't really go out to that community. It's because these people, they work for me. So it's totally different, isn't it? And they're like family to me. So I love them. Sorry, you were going to say something, I think, Chris.
no. I'm listening. I'm listening, and I'm contemplating um, in what I prepped. Because I don't. Again, I told you before. Actually, we started recording. I don't prep a lot, and occasionally I do. And I'm eager
Yeah.
to hear your answer to this. What is one of the questions that came up is how does in your view, how does cultural competence drive success in international business? In other words, if you can deal with a different culture, how will that help you in your international business?
Everybody wants to know that they are understood. And cultural competence helps you understand the next person.
Mhm.
Not only does it help you understand the next person, it helps you connect. Because if you can see things from my perspective, Chris, then we will be on the same page.
Mhm.
That's basically how I see it. But if you don't see things from my perspective, then I think that will just create conflict just naturally. So I think it's important for us to understand, our similarities and our differences, and just to have some respect for that. And that's it. So I think cultural competence is super duper important in business, in relationships, or any associations that you've got with people.
Right. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. I mean, I agree with that. It's my business. So what can I say? So yeah, of course, I agree with that. The other thing is that I bumped into was the Julie Conlif's Academy. What do you do there?
Yeah, thank you. Chili Condiff Academy is quite exciting. That's where I help people. At the moment, my focus has been on auctions, because as we discussed before, really passionate about that particular strategy for loads of different reasons. So Julie Conliffe Academy helps educate people on things that are important in property. At the moment, my focus is on understanding legal packs, avoiding the potential pitfalls when buying a property at auction, because everybody wants to bag a bargain, everybody wants to get a good deal. But little do we know that when we're buying properties at auction, they are common auction pitfalls that if we don't know about them, instead of getting like a legacy of wealth, we'll end up with a legacy of liabilities. So I am passionate about helping people get educated on that, because what you do not know could cost you.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. All right, that's kind of cool. So it again, it maybe it goes across the board, which I don't know. That's how my mind works, I guess. Um, is what can be the pain if you're from South Africa, if you're from Australia, if you are from the UK and you're doing an auction, how can that, and you're doing an auction in, I guess, in the UK, right? That is your physical market, your geographical market. So
Yeah.
how can those cultural differences be in the way, or in other words, how do you have my goodness, my thought process is running wild. I need coffee, I think. It's only 10 o'clock. It's only 10 o'clock in the morning here. Um,
No way. It's nearly
yes.
the end of the day for me.
I
Yeah.
know, I know, I know, I know, I know. You're what is it? It's 4 o'clock where you are?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I just have to get my coffee and even my breakfast. How about that? Anyway, getting back to the point, how do you guide an Aussie in comparison to a South African, in comparison to possibly somebody from Zimbabwe or a Brit during an auction? Do they need different, because they're different cultures, hence do they need a different approach? or different sense of attention?
I think when it comes to the law is really in relation to the letter of the law. So I don't really think that there's any fundamental difference, regardless of where you come from.
Hmm.
I think you just have to understand the law, full stop. But maybe it's the way that it's delivered to you. But in my personal experience, there isn't anything that I've had to do differently because a client is coming from Australia, or differently because a client is coming from, Dubai or South Africa or
Hmm.
wherever. It's only if ever there's like perhaps a language barrier or
Yeah.
something that would need to be overcome. But other than that, there isn't anything that one would need to do
I
differently.
understand. I understand the law, and that's of course that's that rules. However, will these, I don't know. I've mentioned the Aussies, the South Africans, the Zimbabweans, and the Brits. Do they have? Will they ask you different questions because they sort of delegate the process to you, and then you take it from
I hear,
there, given their
I hear.
needs?
Yes, yes, yes. I hear exactly what you mean. So yes. So when I deal with clients from, if I could just mention like maybe the Arab nations, because I've got quite a few clients from there. I haven't had a client from Australia yet. But if I could just maybe use like an Arab client and then
Mhm.
maybe a client from maybe an African country. And maybe from Europe as well. So when I'm dealing with clients from Europe and perhaps Africa, Africa, the first thing that we want to know is we culturally, they want you to explain in a lot of detail about the costings, because I
Mhm.
think that we are super conscious about the money because we consider that we've worked super hard with this money and we do not want to lose even a single penny in the process.
Mhm.
So maybe when I'm approaching it from that perspective, I've got to spell out, all the costs, all the costings, super duper clearly so they understand exactly what they're getting into, which is okay because from, a cultural perspective, that's super duper important. So they are super more conscious about what they're paying out, you know.
Mhm. Sure.
And then when it comes to my Arab clients, they care more about the bottom line. Julie, what am I getting out of this deal? Like you
Mhm.
have to pay this upfront. No, I don't really want to worry about that. I want to know what I'm getting. So they focus more on what they're going to get out of it. So then that determines however much they put in. So some people are focused more on what am I putting in now? What am I putting in now? And some are focused more on, what's the outcome? What do I get out of it? So then it's packaging that in a way that they understand. So really it's the same information, but
Mhm.
just finding a palatable way to package it so we can understand it, from our cultural
Yeah.
backgrounds.
Yeah. So the input per country slash culture could be different, but then it gets filtered through you, and you filter it back into the process of a UK auction of a property. That's sort of how
Yes,
what I
absolutely.
understand. Okay. All right.
Yes.
All right, Julie. It's we're heading towards the 30 minutes mark of a podcast, and I'd like to keep it at 30 minutes because it's digestible for the audience as well. And by the way, if you're listening to this, you can also look at Julie if you want, and look at Chris if you want, because it's also on YouTube. But that'll come a little bit later. All right, so have a look at that as well. Julie, I'm going to ask you two more questions. One that hopefully you prepped already is that can you give us as an audience the three tips that you think are necessary to become more culturally competent?
Okay.
Let's
One is having, sorry.
no, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay, I didn't know whether there was a time lag or whether you were saying something.
No, no, no.
Three tips. Okay, maybe I should have prepared for this, but I think understanding, just being open-minded is super duper important. Being open to understand other people from their own cultural perspectives, that's super duper important. And I also think that there's power in listening because we all want to speak, but it's only in listening that we get to know. And then I also think that it's important for us to take time to learn other people's cultures, because there are a lot of exciting things that are in our differences. So it's great to be different, but we'll only know those differences and explore them if we make room for that.
Very good. Just, I'm sorry, guys, and I shouldn't point out these kind of things, but the drilling is just amazing behind me, and it's in another where I am not. My goodness. All right. Having said
Okay,
that,
you can't hear it though, Chris. I
okay,
really
okay,
can't
okay.
hear
That's that. Like I said, I shouldn't have mentioned it. So the last question. Thank you for the 3 tips. They'll be in the show notes, by the way. And the last tip is if people want to get in touch with you, or if they want to find out what you wrote, what you've written so far, how can they do that? What's the way to get in touch with Julie?
Yeah, perfect. So people can find me on LinkedIn, Julie Conliffe, on my website, Julie Conliffe, and on Amazon. All my 4 best-selling books are on Amazon as well. It would be great to get in touch, or Julie Conliffe Academy.
Of course, the Academy. Of course, forgot about that. No, I didn't. All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thanks for the interview. Have a great afternoon. Well, I'm going to sip my coffee, and I'm sure we'll be in touch
Have
with
your
with each other later. All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.